Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to look at the stages of development in living things. So, we're going to look at some animals and how they change through their lifespan, and some flowering plants and how they change through their lifespan. Our learning intention is that we are learning to identify the stages of development of living things. You can see those lovely baby little chicks down there. Our success criteria for today: you'll be successful when you can talk about the stages of life in animals, you can talk about the stages of life in flowering plants, and you can complete the stages of life activity that I have set for you. Look at that little baby rabbit. He does look like a very old kung fu master, doesn't he? Okay, if we think about animals, animals go through four basic stages of development. They start life as an egg, they become a larva or a young, they become a juvenile or a child, and then they become an adult. Okay, so have a look at some eggs of some insects. We've got those little tiny black ones that are silkworm eggs, and it says there's some larvae in there, but I can see them there, they're little black ones. Then we've got the little tiny monarch butterfly egg, and you can see the hibiscus harlequin bug is laying those beautiful little round eggs on this branch. Here are some spider eggs. Spiders are normally a little bit more protective of their eggs, and they wrap them up into little sacks. We can see some different types of reptile and amphibian eggs on this one. You can see the loggerhead turtle eggs. They lay those in the sand and then they cover them up to keep them safe. We can see the toad eggs that will probably go in some water or around some water. And we can see some snake eggs, and snakes tend to make a little bit of a nest and wrap themselves around their eggs to keep them warm. Here is a picture of a swan sitting on its eggs. And you can see the salmon eggs that have been laid up against the rock to keep them safe. Now, mammals don't tend to have eggs. We tend to keep our babies on the inside. So if we're thinking about mammals like giraffes, cats, the eggs stay safe on the inside to make sure that the babies come out safe. Now we're going to have a look at some larvae. This is an insect larva. So larva is the stage of when it's just come outside of its egg up until it turns into the adult phase or that pre-adult phase. So we can see here there's some silkworm larvae there, and they are absolutely tiny. And then as it's grown up a little bit, you can see it there next to the mulberry. And then you can see the monarch butterfly larva, and it would start out small from its egg because we saw how small it was before, and then it grows up to be slightly bigger before it changes to its next stage of development. So here's some more insect babies, the young. You can see that some of them come out kind of looking like their adult form. So the hibiscus harlequin bugs kind of look like mum, but just a smaller version. The St. Andrew's cross spiderlings kind of look like a spider, just a very small version. But at the top there you can see the dragonfly nymphs. Now it's getting closer to looking like a dragonfly, but it's not quite there yet. They'll have to have another change before they move into that adult phase. Here is our reptiles and amphibians babies. We've got the little crocodile hatchlings that kind of look like mum, just in a smaller form. We've got the snake hatchling. It's going to look like mum, but just smaller. And then you can see the tadpoles at the bottom. So they start to turn into a version of mum and dad inside their egg. And then when they come out, they get bigger. They're kind of a bit like the insect's larva. They're going to change as well. Here's some pictures of our marsupial babies. Now, when they are first born, they are tiny and little and hairless like that, and they're going to stay inside mum's pouch. until they're ready to be out in the world, but that's what they look like when they're still hiding in there. Okay, here's some other pictures of young. We know that the ducklings have come out of eggs and they come out looking like mum and dad, just smaller. We've got puppies and we've got little horses, our foals, and we've got little humans, and we know that they're mammals and they live inside the mum until they're ready to come out. So we moved on to the juveniles. So that's the phase that you move out of when you've moved out of being a baby. So we might be talking about the child or the toddler if we were talking about humans. So this is when they're starting to look a bit more like their parent, and they're starting to be a little bit independent and do some things on their own. So you can see that the harlequin bugs are going to change their outside. You know, they start off as that little red colour and then they take off the black colour, and then when they're the adult, they're that yellow colour that they were when we saw the eggs. Here's the caterpillar doing its beginning to change from that just after born through to looking a bit more like an adult. So their childhood, they put themselves, well, they eat a lot so that they can go into their chrysalis. When they come out of their chrysalis, they're going to look like the adult. So here's some more insects on their childhood, their juvenile stage. So we've got the dragonfly nymph before it gets its wings. So it's gotten longer and its legs have gotten better. We can see where the wings are going to be. We can see here on the stick that he is about ready to take that outside coating off so that his wings can get out. And down here is the cocoon of the silkworm. So he does the same thing as the caterpillar, and he eats a lot and he gets nice and fat, and then he goes into his cocoon, and he's going to get ready to turn into a butterfly or a moth. Can't remember if silkworms are considered moths or butterflies. So the adult phase is where our creatures have moved through that childhood point and they've hit the adulthood where they actually look like their parents again. Okay, you can see the monarch butterflies come out of its cocoon or its chrysalis. You can see the dragonfly has got his wings because he's taken that layer of skin off, and you can see the harlequin bug started to look like mum and dad by taking off that black layer. On this one you can see that the cicadas are also taking their skin off, their outside skin off, to let their wings out. And you can see the silkworm moth there who's taken his chrysalis or his cocoon off and he's turned into an adult moth. Really glad it told me that it's a moth. I learned my lesson now. I'm also really glad that as humans we don't have to take our outer skin off to turn into an adult. Here's the adult spider. We saw the baby spiders, the little childhood juvenile ones, and they were just a smaller version of the adult, and they just grow and grow and grow bigger to become the adult spider. Here is the little baby swans with their parents, the little tiny fluffy cygnets, and you can see what a koala looks like when it's fully grown, because I'm pretty sure you already know what that looks like. But if you compare it back to the little hairless marsupials we saw before, they go through a lot of change to turn out of being a juvenile into becoming an adult. Okay, let's stop and have a little reflection now. I want you to have a think about the stages of life that you've already been through. So you've already done your juvenile, you're still working through. You've done your egg stage. know that we're mammals, and we know that we start our life inside an adult until we're ready to be in the world. And then we grow through our juvenile stage and we get more and more independent and start to look more and more like the adult that we've come from. Okay, now as humans, we are considered under the law to be an adult at 18, but that doesn't mean that we just, stop, we've hit our adult, that's the end of it. We actually keep growing and changing, and we know that we move into that old age stage, and that's how humans work. If you're feeling like you want to go and have another look at this, go and ask an adult at home to show you pictures of themselves going through their life stages. Sometimes it's really strange because you can have a look at pictures of your parents and your grandparents, and they might actually look a bit like you do. Have a chat. I know there are pictures of my cousin, and she looks exactly like my mum when my mum was a little girl. Go and see what you can find out. Okay, so let's move on to some flowering plants. And there is a difference between flowering plants and plants that don't make flowers. Okay, we can see that they go through the seed, which is kind of like the egg stage in an animal. They have a seedling, which is kind of like their juvenile. They have young plants, and then they become the adult plant where they can make the seed. Now, having a look at the pictures, you'll notice that seeds all look different. They don't look the same. Some seeds are really big, like the nasturtium seeds you can see there. I've got some custard apple seeds here at home, and they're quite big, and they kind of look like the wattle seeds, but I know they're a bit bigger than the wattle seeds. And seeds can be really, really tiny too. They can be so small that you can barely see them. So here's what happens when those seeds sprout. They become seedlings, and you can see that the wattle kind of looks like the plant that it's going to turn into. The nasturtium's got the beautiful big leaves that it has. Those little tomato seedlings look like they're going to turn into some yum plants. And there's the little soybeans. Now, this one is always a celebration. When you've planted seeds and you can see those little seedlings growing, it is the most exciting part of growing a plant, is knowing that you were successful. So here's our seeds that have moved from their seed state through their seedling, and now they're a young plant. So you can see the young wattle and the young nasturtium and the young tomato and the young soy plant. This is where they do all that growing and changing and developing so that they can turn into an adult and get ready to make seeds for the next round of life. So here's our adult plants, and we know a flowering plant is an adult when it makes the flowers. So you can see those beautiful yellow fluffy wattle flowers, and I know those are in the school somewhere. Nasturtiums come up with a beautiful, I think of nasturtiums as a beautiful flower. They come in lots of different colours. You can see the soybeans here. Now the beans come once the flower has been pollinated, and they turn into the fruit, which is in the soybean is the soybeans. And in the tomato, it started with flowers. They were pollinated by some bees, and once that's happened and the flowers no longer there, then the little fruits can grow. So to be able to have fruits and vegetables that come from a flower, we've got to have our bees to pollinate. So that's why it's really important that we keep all the bees and the bugs around, because we can't have flowers and fruits and vegetables without them. And I'm sure if you've had anything to do with a garden, you know how important it is to keep the insects around if you want to have some food. It's time for the you do, your job. So what I want you to do is I want you to draw a table like the one that I have into your home learning journal. It should have baby, toddler, child, adult, okay, because those kind of line up to our animal life stages. And then you're going to sort the activities at the bottom as to whether they go in baby, toddler, child, or adult. And a good way to do that is to say it out loud. Can the baby walk? Is the baby learning to ride a bicycle? Man, I hope not. Is the child driving a car? Oh, that sounds like a nightmare. Okay, have a think about whether that belongs in which stage. Okay, when you're finished, take a photo, send it to the teacher on the email, put it in the OneNote, or you can send a copy of it in when we collect your home paper copies. Have fun, good luck, and I really hope you get to see some really embarrassing old photos of mum and dad when you ask them about their childhood.